theme of enjoying God in the mundane. And I must admit, I did have a thought that said for the next 10 to 15 minutes, you could be practicing enjoying God in the mundane. It's a great opportunity for you to do so. But I do actually hope that this won't be too mundane and it will help kind of you to see God and to enjoy Him more fully in the monotony of day-to-day life. And to begin, I just thought I'd say I've always found the book of Ecclesiastes to be a book which has resonated with me. And you may remember me saying this before, for just whatever reason, it just has always sort of spoken to me, and I found a great kind of comfort in sort of its words. And I think one of the reasons for this is sort of lines such as it is striving after the wind, vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. And then in the passage today, and it's one this passage is one which is often used at funerals. It's telling us how everything has its time, everything has its place, and everything has its season. And then you get to verse 9 with the question, what do workers gain from their toil? And it just speaks to me, and I think it's because I've often just sat there wondering, sort of, what is the purpose to what I'm doing? What is the purpose to all of this? To the fact I'm just doing the same thing again and again. Each day we do it and we do them again, and then we wake up the next day and you do it again. And then, a year later, you're still doing the same thing and don't feel like you've particularly progressed anywhere. And that sort of just, so I heard it gets worse, but that sort of whole circle of life, as it were, does quite often led me to sort of just reflect and think about those things. What is the point of all of this? What do we gain from this toil in life? And so the book has always spoken to me. And I think one good example of the question of what do we gain from our toil for me has been with gardening. And thankfully, I now have Charlie do my garden, which makes things a bit easier. But with gardening, there are two things which I'm really not a fan of doing in gardening, and that is mowing and weeding. It's because you do it, very nice, and then you come back out the following week and it all needs doing again. And you just wonder, why? Well, why have I done all that effort? My back taking after and all that, and then it's just back again to where it was before. And it just feels like, to me, this striving after the wind. It feels a bit meaningless. It makes you wonder what you've gained from your toil. And that's true for day-to-day life. Day-to-day life, it just happens. Much of it is sort of simple, routine stuff, which isn't going to change the world and can feel quite unfulfilling when we spend time sort of pondering about it. And if we dwell on it a bit too much, then it can begin to feel a bit of an empty endeavor. Life can feel a bit empty when we dwell a bit too much on these mundane things that we do each day. And so this question is, how can we enjoy God through the day-to-day, through the mundane things of life, which we just have to do? How can I enjoy God when washing the dishes, when cleaning the house, when going to work, when stuck in the rush hour traffic, when sorting out my finances, and so on and so on? I'm sure you can all think of things in life where you're just like, oh, I have to do this, and I really don't enjoy it. And Anne has also given us some examples earlier very helpfully. And then you get, and this is sort of starts to answer the question in verse 12 of our passage in Ecclesiastes. It says, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live. And that word happy is about to rejoice, to be joyful. That's what the root of that word is in the original languages. So the best thing is for people to be able to rejoice in their life, in the seasons which they are in the mundane things which we are doing. And that's the challenge, and that's why we're looking at this, enjoying God. And then he continues in verse 13, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. And so find enjoyment in the mundane, to be satisfied in life, we are told is a gift of God. So that must be where we start with these things, is with God. And as we have learnt before in this series already, our purpose, our true sense of satisfaction in life is to enjoy God and to glorify Him forever. And for us to find this satisfaction in our toil, in our mundane, for us to be able to do that, then just to draw us back to that sunbeam analogy, we need to be looking up that beam towards God through those things which we are doing in the mundane, not just looking at the big pile of dishes which have piled up in the sink, but using that pile of dishes to look at them and then look up to God. That's the skill that is there. That's what we're trying to learn. And that's how we can sort of embrace this gift of God and use the verse with Paul saying he's able to be content in all things. That's what we're talking about here in the mundane. How can we be content in those moments? And it's a big challenge. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a challenge which we face. And it's one we are called to, even in those moments, to enjoy God, to be able to take pleasure in Him and know more about Him. There's a monk who was called Brother Lawrence, and he's known for a book which is called The Practice of the Presence of God. And in that book, it says that for Brother Lawrence, he worked in a kitchen as a cook in the monastery. And he says of it, and that the time of business does not differ with me from the time of prayer. And he goes on to talk about how he finds the presence of God even in the busyness of the kitchen, with all the noise that's going on in there and the stress that's going on in there. To practice the presence of God in those moments, he's saying, is like vital to him, and what allows him to kind of have what people describe as sort of his joyful disposition that he has. He's saying this is what's important. And for him, a prayer meeting is equal to doing his job in the kitchen. And I think that's a real challenge for us. It's challenged me when I read it to think about what we do. So often we put the prayer meeting, that's sort of the pedestal of prayer, and then might go home and do the dishes, but that's a completely separate thing. Whereas he's saying, actually, the prayer meeting should just be a continuation of what you are already doing. And I thought it's such a helpful way to think and mindset to get to start with this question of enjoying God in the mundane. It's how we can find this true satisfaction in our toil. And we need to realize with that kind of mindset, we need to realize that at all times, as our Ecclesiastes passage says, all times are appointed by God, and that everything is beautiful in its time. And we know this because, again, the Bible in the New Testament says God is working all things for good. And so even in the hard times, even in the struggles, even in the most mundane of tasks, we can know that God is going to be using it for good. And we need to recognize that God isn't only in those pockets of life that we put aside for Him, but He is actually there in all moments. He is there for us, ready for us. And it's so easy for us, I think, as Christians, to compartmentalize Christian life, to put it into boxes where we have our sort of Christian life in one box over here, the Sunday morning, maybe the prayer meeting, maybe if you come on Wednesdays, whatever it may be, and then say, well, this is my other box I've got where I work, where I'm with my grandkids, where I'm doing whatever it is I do in my day-to-day life. And we box it up into separate categories, and we don't realize that actually it all should be crossing over. It should all be interwoven into one. We are called to our Christian life in all circumstances. That's the reality of what we are called to do. We are called to be Christians in all moments. We may have our duties which we do in the week, and they may be different. You may not bring those duties into church on a Sunday, but you should be taking church on a Sunday into those activities in the week, because we are called to be Christian in all times, in all moments, in all circumstances. And to maybe start looking at it a bit more practically in these moments of day-to-day life, in these areas that we have, we can set our mind on the things of God. That's the challenge in those moments. It's not to just focus on those things and think, oh, I've got the dishes now, or or whatever it is, to set our minds on the things of God. In the ancient sort of Celtic spirituality in these lands, they used to have lots of little prayers which they would say for every sort of moment in the day, for every event, whether they were waking up, whether they were about to eat, whether they're going to go out traveling, whether they were going to go to bed. All through the day, they had all these lots of little prayers, and they would start each activity with a short, just a very short prayer, and that they had. And for us today, maybe when we are doing our sort of day-to-day activities, when we are doing those things we find mundane, maybe we could actually start taking up a bit of that spirituality and putting it in. Pray to God as we start. Maybe as you start washing the dishes or loading the dishwasher, you could say a little prayer. Something like, Lord, thank you for the food and drink that have blessed these plates and cups. And please help me ensure these plates are clean and safe to use going forward. Just a little prayer. This film might seem a bit silly, but actually just a little prayer like that. It can really change things. It can really draw you to God and getting God into that moment. And just can be something simple. I'm sure as well that out there in the world, on the World Wide Web somewhere, someone has probably written a much more eloquent prayer than that little one I've just given you that you could use. But actually, whatever you pray, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything well-formed. It can just be whatever comes out of your mouth in that moment. But actually, when you're coming to a task and you're thinking, oh, I'm not looking forward to this, when you have that thought, take that moment to set your mind on the things of God. Just say that little prayer and see where things go from there. And another thing you can do is to keep doing it in these whilst you're doing the tasks as well, not just at the start, but during the tasks. And just to say as well, it doesn't have to be task specifically, just any time, if you're feeling a bit bored now, you could do it now. You can set your mind on things, on anything that's mundane. It doesn't have to be you doing something. If you're just sat around twiddling your thumbs, not knowing what to do, take that moment to be a moment to set your mind on God. And whilst you're doing it, you can remind yourselves about the truths of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have a friend who has an incredible gift of being able to turn pretty much anything into a gospel illustration in an instant. I don't know how he does it. Like he would see a chair, for example, and he'll just be able to be like, oh, that chair, it reminds me of Jesus because of X, Y, Z. And it just points to the gospel, and I'm just there. It's fascinating he's able to do that. I'd probably have to go on to ChatGPT or something to first get an idea on that. But it's one of those things, but it's similar to that in what I'm saying to do is that you can think when you've got this task, whatever it is you're bored about, you can say, what is this task? What is this mundane thing telling me about God? It might just be a sense of gratitude. I am thankful I have a home to clean. But it could be something more profound than just that simple thanks. It could be as I clean this home, I remember that through Jesus on the cross and by my baptism, I have been cleansed through no work of my own, but by the blood of Jesus, he has cleansed me. And that could be just something that you link together and you start thinking these things. And suddenly, you're cleaning your home is a whole new thing where you're thinking about the gospel, thinking about the work of Jesus in your heart. It can bring you a new joy. And it might not be something you think about, might not be something related to the task. You could be just looking out the window, staring outside during whatever you're doing, and just think about the beauty of creation. Oh, what a beautiful tree that is. I've talked about the trees there before. Look what a beautiful tree that is. What a beautiful garden I have, whatever it may be. You could set your mind on that because you're just seeing it whilst you do your task. But whatever it is, you can turn your mind to the things of God. All these mundane things in life can so easily feel pointless. They can feel like a monotonous routine, like a striving after the wind. But actually, these moments, they are a wonderful opportunity to fix our minds upon God and to enjoy him in those moments. Because actually, it's often in the mundane things where we have a bit of capacity in our mind to think about other things. Because you're just washing the dishes. You can do that whilst thinking about other things. You're probably thinking about, I don't know what you might be thinking. I'd be thinking about football. Some people might be thinking about politics. Some people might just be thinking about pretty colours. Could be anything really, but we have those opportunities. And so the great opportunity is to take these moments to enjoy Him and to fix our mind upon God, to consider what He is doing, to think about the things eternal which have been set in our hearts, as the passage has said. And rather than sort of grumbling about these things, rather than getting depressed about these things, which is so easy to do in these moments, we can rejoice in a good God. We can rejoice in all the things that He has done, because actually, in these mundane moments, they're the best opportunities, I think, to start thinking about God. Even if you're not sure what to think, you could maybe turn on the audio Bible whilst you're doing the dishes, because you've got an opportunity to listen to something. Put on a sermon. Put on the Lectio 365 app, which helps you pray. Whatever it may be, you've got an opportunity. And I think that's one of the great things in the mundane moments, is to realize, yes, they have a routine of life, but actually, routine of life, they give us opportunity. An opportunity to see God, to spend time with Him, to be in His presence, to love Him, to remind ourselves of the good things He has done for us, the blessings He has given us, and for us to accept the gift of God, to be able to be sort of content to find satisfaction in the day-to-day of life, and to turn our eyes to Him. So I think that's how we can enjoy God in the mundane, is to turn our hearts and our minds to Him, and to remember what a good God we have. Amen.